Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to UTS. My name is Lee, and I will be your MC for today. Okay, so I would like to announce the schedule for today. First, we are going to have Sodargye Rinpoche for the talk, meditation in action, for about 15 minutes, and followed by 40 minutes Q&A session. Okay, so now I'm going to invite Rinpoche into the room. And may I ask everyone, please rise. And after when you see Rinpoche coming, please give him a big round of applause. Okay, thank you everyone. Please be seated. At this point in time, I would like to invite Professor Sam from the Faculty of Law in UTS to give us a welcome speech. Okay, welcome, Professor.
Well, welcome to the UTS. My name is Professor Sam Blay. I'm a professor of law at the UTS, and it's indeed my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche to this institution. As most of you will know, Khenpo Sodargye is, of course, one of the most well-known and indeed the leading Tibetan Buddhist teacher in China today. It is indeed a great privilege to have you here with us at the UTS. And I must say, you come to the UTS at a very important time. Indeed, the topic for today at this talk couldn't be more timely. You come to talk to us about meditation in action. At a time when there is so much crisis in the world, this is a very appropriate topic. To most of us who are here today, perhaps Khenpo Sodargye does not really need an introduction. But if you permit me just to say a few words about you, your presence here, it will perhaps help for those of us who may not be that familiar. Khenpo Sodargye, in fact, before we started today's proceedings, there was something on the screen, and some of you would have already read a lot about him as we continued. He was born on the 4th day of the sixth month in the Tibetan calendar year in 1962. As in fact, a lot of you would have Googled him by now if you haven't. He, of course, graduated in 1985 at the Luranga Sita Buddhist Institute. You would also know that as part of his studies, he, of course, was mentored by no less than Khenpo Chipcha himself as part of his studies. And following that, after his graduation in 1985, he traveled the world over from, in fact, 1990 through to 1999. He was in the company of the great master himself, traveling through Canada, Germany, Malaysia, Singapore, Nepal, in fact, quite a number of countries, perhaps too many to mention at this stage. It's what makes his presence here quite important to all of us. As you perhaps also know, as part of his academic activities, he has published a lot and translated a lot of the Tibetan works into Chinese. Indeed, as we sat here waiting for him to come, you would have seen a lot of what was said on the screen, that one of his main contributions is how to bring Tibetan disciplines in Buddhism into Chinese. And so he's translated no less than 100 works into Chinese for Chinese citizens to understand and perhaps to follow the discipline better. Perhaps one of the points we should perhaps emphasize in his great works so far has been his charitable works. As you know, he set up the Love and Kindness, Love and Heart Foundation. Today in Shanghai, he's the honorable chair of the Love and Wisdom and Kindness Foundation in China as we talk. Perhaps we should remember the lessons which he teaches us in all his discussions. And if you will allow me, I'll just say a couple of things that he has said in his teachings. And I think it's quite important, particularly for today's discussions. In all his teachings, he's made one point very clear. And one point he makes is this: as long as we can benefit sentient beings, we should be willing to be his servant, as a servant of the Buddha, for millions and millions of eons, even if only one person could generate one virtuous thought through our efforts. But perhaps more importantly, and for the purposes of today's talk, this is one other point he makes, which I want to bring to your attention. He says, I don't know how long I can live, but as long as I live and can breathe, even if there is only one listener, I will try my best to bring benefit to him with Dhamma. Ladies and gentlemen, I say to Khenpo Sodargye today, even though he says he doesn't know how long he's going to live, we hope he lives for many, many years. Ladies and gentlemen, I also say today that he says even if he has only one listener, it will be enough. As you can see today, you don't have one listener, you have many of us here. Today at the UTS, you are among friends, believers, and followers. You come to us as a great institution which is multicultural. We have over 27,000 students from different parts of the world, different cultures, different religions, but united as one humanity. It is what makes your message today on mediation very important. Welcome to the UTS, and welcome to the company of your followers, believers, and friends. Welcome.
Thank you, Professor. In dear Venerable Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a great honor. Rinpoche is invited by UTS Buddhist Meditation Society to give all Dhamma friends a great speech. And here I'm on behalf of the UTS Buddhist Meditation Society in the organizing committee to welcome the arrival of Sodargye Rinpoche. In the topic that Rinpoche is going to talk about today is as energetic as this young university. Meditation in action. Buddha himself had mentioned that. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. I think that is the basic principle of the meditation. And many of you may be very familiar with sitting meditation. And today we are going to receive teaching from Rinpoche about how to meditate on movement. I would like to introduce the interpreter we are having today, Dr. Karen Jiang. She had received her PhD from the University of Tennessee in the United States. So it is our real honor to have distinguished Rinpoche here with us here today. Without further ado, please join me now to welcome Rinpoche.
First, I'm very grateful to Professor Sam and also to the school's teachers and students present, as well as other meditation enthusiasts. Is this okay? Here we are at a technology university. Technology is truly advanced. Is that better? I'm also very grateful to this microphone. I think today here, the topic I'll discuss with everyone is meditation in action. In fact, when we speak of meditation in action, perhaps many people here find it quite novel. Because in our ordinary life, what we usually call meditation involves sitting in one place, continuously observing one's own mind. Such a method in Buddhism also involves meditating in a sitting posture known as the 7-point posture of Vairochana, Meditation in other religions and secular contexts also typically involves the body being in a relatively quiet state, with practitioners observing their own mind or a chosen focus, with everyone observing their own mind or observing their own focus. Throughout the world, this is a quite common meditation method. However, the topic or content I am sharing with you today presents a principle rather different from this. I've noticed that many people here actually place great emphasis on physical exercise. Perhaps the blue sky, ocean, and natural surroundings here make it convenient, and possibly people's own free lifestyle and the fresh air here, in other words, such outdoor conditions, provide opportunities for people to frequently engage in physical activities like running, walking dogs, and so on. Many very relaxing and varied types of exercise. This is physical exercise. I think not only Australians here, but probably people all over the world, when it comes to physical exercise, through physical exercise, they want to achieve better health and greater happiness. This is also a common goal people seek in life. Actually, as I just said, many people here probably engage in regular physical exercise. Whether elderly or young, it's indispensable. More importantly, because our happiness doesn't only come from the body alone, it should have a close relationship with our mind. To enhance the happiness of the mind, this also relates to qualities like mental wisdom, mental strength, our mind's compassion, kindness. In these aspects, we also need to enhance its health through a method of cultivation. If it's physical exercise, actually, it can only enhance health in specific areas within this lifetime. But if our inner mind becomes healthy through cultivation, the happiness it brings is far more enduring. Methods for training the inner mind are quite numerous, especially now, meditation, whether in religious settings or in institutions of higher learning, as well as in other social groups and communities. What we now call meditation is a very good method for the overall enhancement of body and mind, and for physical and mental health. Through meditation, the mind gains peace and tranquility. This is of vital importance for each person, because people often experience suffering, experience greed, anger, delusion, and various afflictions. When we're driven by afflictions, neither our words nor our actions tend to be very reasonable. Therefore, at any time, maintaining the purity and health of our mind is very important for each person. This kind of mental cultivation and meditation, as we just mentioned, sitting meditation, practicing while seated, is relatively easy. But to maintain it while walking, eating, or during our ordinary daily activities, that's quite difficult. But actually in Buddhism there's a principle regarding this. That is to say, the Buddha taught in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta that when we walk, we should be aware that we are walking. When we stand, we should be aware that we are standing. When we sit, we should be aware that we are sitting. When we lie down, we should be aware that we are lying down. So according to the scriptures, it's not only when we are abiding quietly that we should keep our minds tranquil. More importantly, during any activity, we must observe our own minds. So in Buddhist scriptures, dating back over 2,000, nearly 3,000 years, this method of observing one's own inner mind was very clearly laid out. Actually, this kind of mind observation is very important in our daily lives, because those of you here may not have time to continuously sit in meditation continuously, morning, evening, or during the day. Such opportunities might be quite rare. The key is, if it can be applied, including when we're driving, walking, going to work, in various other aspects of life, if we can apply such meditation, a tranquil state of mind is quite necessary. This kind of mental state, this kind of meditation, it's fair to say, many people need to frequently in their lives. If we can keep our minds well abided, then even when unpleasant things in life, when you lose your temper with others, perhaps the argument won't be so severe. When you do anything, you also won't lose composure so easily. So for our minds, we must frequently use mindfulness to maintain them, to constantly keep them clear. The meditation in action we just mentioned. Without long-term cultivation, we can't expect to attain it immediately. Because with any cultivation, these kinds of mental states aren't something you can obtain easily. You must definitely need to go through long-term cultivation. When we're in the process of cultivation, in Buddhism, it can be divided into Theravada Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, also called Northern Buddhism, and there's also Tibetan Buddhism. In these three Buddhist traditions, there are different practices of meditation in action, as you might understand. First is Theravada Buddhism. Originally in countries like Sri Lanka, Myanmar, including Thailand and so on, There are many practices that maintain mindfulness during our actions. Among them, quite representative figure is Thailand's Master Luang Por Tian. He has long since passed away, but he pioneered what is called meditation in action. Actually, I've previously looked into some of his related principles. The important part probably involves a series of about a dozen or so movements. That is, placing hands on the thighs, then raising the right hand and beginning movement, and also placing both hands on the chest, all the while frequently observing it in one's own mind, using mindfulness to recognize it. This process is a kind of meditation that never separates from a practice of right mindfulness. In their meditation method, they often compare our discriminating, deluded thoughts to a rat stealing things. The wisdom that counteracts and recognizes it is compared to a cat. If our cat doesn't frequently catch the rat will cause us harm. Once we train the cat well, the rat completely disappears. At this time, you'll recognize the inherent awareness of your own mind. So this kind of practice, essentially when we're right in the midst of movement, you'll become aware, I'm walking now. I'm strolling by the seaside now. I'm listening to a lecture somewhere now. What am I doing now? It's a method of constantly using mindfulness to observe one's own mind in every moment. I once met someone who said he practiced meditation in action very well. He said, I constantly pay attention to what I myself am doing at every moment. Later I said, this isn't necessarily meditating very well. Everyone has that basic awareness. At this time, I don't know if you've realized, actually, the essence of our mind is very subtle. According to the view of Theravada Buddhism, if our minds continuously generate discriminating thoughts, we remain in samsara. Once we are aware that the mind is now moving, now abiding, now doing this or that, once we see the whole situation clearly, gradually we'll attain liberation. But what is still lacking? We must understand that its essence is emptiness. Regarding the mind's essence, if we haven't recognized it as emptiness, it will be very difficult to eliminate such grasping in the future. Now, this isn't just a Buddhist practice. From a worldly perspective, I feel that people's mentality nowadays, if they don't frequently pay attention, it's very strange. For example, two people might have a meal together for an hour, but perhaps for half of that time, each is looking at their own phone, sending their own messages. Where real communication should happen, there's basically none. So nowadays, relationships between people are like this. People sit together physically, but their minds are elsewhere, either sending messages or transmitting photos, sharing photos, sending emails, and so on. So if we don't have a good grasp of our own mind, let alone recognizing the arising of thoughts, even maintaining basic ethical relationships between people becomes quite difficult, even with all our advanced technology. Also, as I mentioned earlier, in Northern Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, there's also meditation in action. Their form of meditation in action, that is to say, there is a practice called Pratyutpana Samadhi. The Pratyutpana Samadhi is essentially a form of meditation of visualizing Buddha. The practice involves from 1 day and night up to 90 days, not lying down or sitting every day while walking. They visualize the Buddha. So it's maintaining this deep meditation even amidst very intense physical movement. This is also a very famous practice in Chinese Buddhism. This practice is very famous in history. For example, Master Huiyuan, Master Zhi, and Vinaya, Master Daoxuan, etc. Very famous figures in Chinese history, all practiced it. Moreover, the entire process is also quite ascetic. For instance, during the prolonged walking, their feet also swell very severely. But indeed, through such meditation and Buddha recitation in movement, finally, they can directly see the yidam they cultivate. Also, in Chinese Buddhism, those present may know, there's the so-called Chan school. In Chan school, there's the sixth patriarch, Master Huineng. In his platform sutra, he explained the meaning of the two words, sitting meditation. What is sitting? Not giving rise to deluded thoughts is sitting. What is Chan? To see one's own innate nature internally, unmoving, that is Chan. Regarding Chan and sitting, we usually think that sitting meditation means sitting down and focusing the mind. On one point, that's our conventional understanding. But actually, some of Chan school's higher states are internally observing the mind's non-movement and not arising any discriminating thoughts. Whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, one does not give rise to coarse, deluded thoughts. The Chan school has such an explanation. More importantly, in the Chan school, there's a song of enlightenment. The song of enlightenment is a Vajra song of realizing the way. In this text it says, walking is also Chan, sitting is also Chan. Speech, silence, movement, stillness, essence at ease. That is to say, for our body, whether sitting we are in the state of Chan. Our actions and movements are also in the state of Chan. Speaking is also in the state of Chan. Not speaking in silence is also in the state of Chan. Whether our mind is active or quiet, in all states, one is serenely abiding in the state of wisdom. This should be said to be Chan school's quite high state. I myself also very much admire such a state, because we humans can often calm the mind in one setting, but when leaving this kind of setting, the mind often becomes disturbed. Sometimes the mind even loses its composure completely. That can happen. So we are very much in need of such a state. Thirdly, according to Tibetan Buddhism's view, I feel that merely wanting the mind to abide, wanting to sit in meditation, isn't easy. There should be a kind of training, but training methods. First, we need these three: introspection, mindfulness, and conscientiousness. Because without these three methods, our minds fluctuate very easily. It's like a wild monkey or a wild horse. It doesn't stop for even a moment. When you first start, you want to abide well, but after a while, the mind is running east and west again. The mind scatters outward very easily. So through these three methods, the mind can gradually, no matter what the object of focus is, abide very easily. The first one I mentioned, so-called introspection, is essentially constantly observing one's own mind, observing one's own body, observing one's own speech. We also often, while working, use one mind in a dual-use manner to observe what exactly is my mind thinking, what is my speech saying, what is my body doing. It's like being a sentinel who constantly watches over the area they are protecting, or like an owner frequently checking to see if their horse is still there. It's this kind of method. This is what is called introspection. In our meditation, it's very important. The second is called mindfulness. So-called mindfulness, merely knowing your three doors isn't enough. You should need to rely on methods from former teachers, parents, or elders for counteracting unwholesome mind. Just like when we discover this horse, we need to rely on a rope to tie it to another place. The third is called conscientiousness. So-called conscientiousness is, you've already discovered your three doors need to use some wholesome antidotes. Then at every moment you must be cautious, shouldn't let your own mind fall into some wrong paths, guide it onto the right path. This should be called conscientiousness. Through these three methods, we have what is perhaps the best way to guide beginners into the gate of meditation. Now, when it comes to actual meditation practice, we can think of two scenarios. One is for relatively ordinary people, the general public. For them, it's about having a method that works at any time. Our body, it's best to have a connection with the state of meditation, and our speech also frequently has a connection. For me personally, the best tool for meditation in action is my mala beads. This is my best tool for it. Relying on this tool, I frequently recite Om Mani Padme Hum, that is, reciting Avalokiteshvara's mantra. My mind frequently visualizes Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. So in this way, actually our body, speech, and mind, whether walking or riding in a car or at any time, we can apply it. When I say this, I think it should be very reasonable. And it's not just me. I see in our audience there are also many Tibetan people with mala beads around their necks. Actually, these mala beads, they're not merely a kind of decoration. For some young people, perhaps they regard them as a kind of decoration. But more importantly, behind them, during any of your movements, they carry a method of purifying the mind. This point, not only here, you may go to the Himalayas. In many Tibetan communities, you'll discover through such meditation the happiness in their hearts. Their happiness index should be very high. There's a certain connection in this regard. For those of you here, whether you have faith in this or not, the power of mantras is actually inconceivable, much like medicine can be. Therefore, you should try it yourself. Through any method, as long as your own mind becomes purified, this should be useful for each of us. Perhaps some of you can't recite it. I don't know if you can. I'll recite once. Will you follow me once? Om Mani Padme Hum Shi. Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shi.
Actually, this can be used while walking, as I just mentioned, including when you're washing vegetables or washing dishes, at any time. Having such words, then naturally in one's own mind, many discriminating thoughts deluded thoughts, including some suffering, fear, anxiety, etc. These will gradually disappear. If you don't have great interest or faith in Buddhism, actually the world now isn't mainly based on faith. It should be based on worldly truth. For example, some people might have no confidence in a certain medicine, but after taking it, if it can cure your bodily illness, I feel whether you have faith or confidence doesn't matter. Therefore, regarding medicine for our minds, it's also not merely limited to religious faith. For some capable, powerful teachings, we all should be worthy of trying ourselves. If we observe our own minds and even higher practices, actually each person can observe. In life, we often face unhappy events or when things don't go smoothly at work. Naturally, we experience some suffering. Also, conversely, there's a kind of happiness. It's just that these happiness and suffering are merely mental fabrications. When you truly observe, perhaps our so-called mind now also can't be found. If the mind also can't be found, then happiness and suffering also can't be obtained. This kind of wisdom is called the wisdom of no self, but ordinary people may not necessarily realize this state. If we truly observe frequently, the so-called I also can't be found. This inability to find isn't merely a Buddhist statement. This is an actual situation. This actual situation, each person can discover it. In this situation, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a Tisha. He was Indian. He came to Tibet. He said, for people with high realization, no matter how many unwholesome, discriminating thoughts arise in a day, they are all seen as pure Dharmakaya wisdom. This, in our ordinary life, when you internally observe yourself, people with slightly higher realization can discover it at any time. This kind of state, you don't need to meditate alone in a quiet place with the door closed. You should, in any of your life's walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, to recognize your mind's original face. Actually, for each person in samsara, recognizing one's own mind's essence, this is very important. It's just that I personally feel, unfortunately, many people now are busy with this life's illusory, dream-like affairs of this present life. To truly observe what your inner essence actually is, on this point, among the world's vast population, very few actually do it. Earlier, during the introduction from the university, it was mentioned that this school has students from over 120 countries and so on. At the time, I thought in my mind, very good, it's such an open school. But I also produced a discriminating thought. I thought, among truly so many people, using introspection to recognize what their own minds actually are, how many people are there? This was my meditation in action. The science and technology here, I still very much admire it, because just now I looked at the entire architecture. Indeed, many places where I come from are far behind. But conversely, sometimes we humans also need inner genuine truth. This kind of truth often, perhaps in places where science isn't advanced, places with traditional culture, we can also find some of its traces. Everyone here knows that nowadays, in institutions of higher learning, both East and West, the education provided is mainly about external things, material aspects. The instruments employed also mainly explore the external material world. But our true inner world, including each person in seeking themselves, there are very few educational philosophies. So at this time, when we encounter, including life's concrete issues of birth, aging, sickness, and death, many people are quite vague and indifferent. In any case, to conclude today's lecture, I'll share a short story. Once, during the Buddha's time, there was a young monk. He followed a very famous figure in Buddhism called Shariputra. When going out together with him on the road, he saw many farmers. Bringing water from far away to farmland, he asked, "Can water really be brought all the way to the fields like this?" He said, "As long as you know the key methods and techniques, anything is possible." Later, in another place, he saw many carpenters straightening bent wood to make arrows, or shaping other pieces of wood into wheels, and so forth. At this time, "Why is this?" When the young monk asked, Shariputra said, "As long as you have the right techniques, anything is possible." Later, through such things seen and heard, he himself thought, "These materials without consciousness can also do such inconceivable things. Then my conscious mind, our ordinary mind, cultivating it in different directions, should be possible." Later, through his efforts, he left the ordinary person's agitated mind and truly attained a peaceful, happy, liberated, and free mind. Finally, I hope everyone, on your life's journey, while exploring advanced technology and seeking a bright future, will not lose yourselves in the process. you should be able to find your mind's original face. Thank you, everyone.